So welcome to the third episode for the homeschooling series under Level Up. I will do a quick round of introduction today for those who weren't here in the last 2 weeks, inshallah. So I'll start with introducing myself and this channel. So I'm Khidher Adam, born and bred in Kenya, a father of 4, and I recently started this channel with the intention of bringing to the community experts in different fields. So at the moment we're talking about parenting and specifically homeschooling, and inshallah later on we'll be looking at different fields that will inshallah benefit the community. The Level Up program, this is the third series that we are discussing, and we have been talking about homeschooling, and our guests, Brother Absar and Sister Sabine, I will allow them to introduce themselves. And today we also have a guest from a different organization that I'll let him announce himself in a few minutes, Mr. Nkurumah. So over to Absar and Sister Sabine, and then we can talk to Mr. Nkurumah as well. Brother Absar, you have the mic.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum to everyone. And so my name is Absar Kazmi. I'm the father of 4 children. And my wife and I, we've been homeschooling for the past 11 years. We started around about 2009. And my eldest daughter is, inshallah, she'll be 19 this year. A-levels, and my second one is working on her O-levels. Third one is in about grade 8. We're home educating, so it's not like a specific it doesn't go with the exact schooling system. And the last one is in 10th grade, so I guess sorry, she's 10 years old, so I guess that would be about 5th grade. And professionally, I'm an illustrator and I'm a content writer. Maybe some of the audience members, they may have heard of my comic series called Life with the Ahmed Family. So do check that out. Google it when you get a chance. And that's really about it for me. And I'll let my wife introduce herself.
All right, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sabine Khan, Absar's better half, and we're home educating our girls. My profession, my background actually is I'm a medical school graduate. However, education really interested me. So after our girls went to school for my elder 2, for about till grade 2, we decided to embark on this journey. I am currently the academic coordinator at the institution in Parklands Masjid, the mosque in Parklands. And I've been there for a good 1.5 years now. So we're doing this with different projects, yeah.
We have also Mr. Nkurumah, who is the president of HEAD. Mr. Nkurumah, if you could come online with your video. Yes, and then introduce yourself, please.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. As Adama said, my name is Nkurumah Mauncho. I am the president of an organization called HEAD, which is an acronym for Holistic Educators in Africa and the Diaspora. And I am a father of 3 daughters. My oldest is turning 20 at the end of this month. My middle child is turning 17, and my last born just turned 14. And they're all in different stages. Just as Mr. Khan said, whether you're in grade 8 or grade 9, it's a combination of my last one. She's in grade 8 in some subjects she's in grade 9. And so is the same with my middle child, Nabia, who also is in grade 11 and grade 10 and grade 11. And my last one is just finishing her last exams. We are currently doing the Canadian curriculum because they were born in Canada before we moved back to Kenya. And we plugged them into that system, given the fact that they'll be going there for university. Or we assume they'll go back to university. So right now, I currently run my own website design business. And I think I'll say that for now. I've got more that I'll share with a little later.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. So just to let our audience know, we've decided to bring in the organization HEAD because we think there'll be a resource that many homeschoolers or aspiring homeschooler parents would find beneficial. And Mr. Nkurumah will also share some of the questions that were raised last time in terms of legality and curriculum. He'll also give us some perspective on that. But before we go back to Mr. Nkurumah, I would like Sister Sabine, last time she had left us talking about, just about to start about curriculum. So Sister Sabine, if you could just take us back to where we were from last week, maybe a recap, and then maybe you can share the slides.
Right, Brother Khidher. So can you see that?
Yep, we can see it. Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, so from what we left off last time, actually our focus was more on preschool. We talked about the basic, the category we took was from 0 to 7 years. And then we said we kick in focuses on today. And again, you can mold this according to your children's age. There's no set criteria, depends on your child. So I'm just gonna move ahead now regarding formal education. So when we talk about formal education, we're talking about a structure which is designed on the objectives, which we took earlier. We talked about the objectives of educating one's child, and we chose to use the word of education as opposed to schooling, and we looked into that in detail earlier. So when we're looking at the structure, meaning now that I'm embarking on this journey of educating my child, I would design it on something, roughly we look at two things. We're gonna look at a routine, and then we're gonna look at a curriculum, all right? Because with a routine, it creates harmony in the household. You're not pulling each other's hair out, and there's basically everyone's working towards something with a goal and as a team, right? So this is agreed upon by parents and children. And remember, we have to keep in context our objectives in mind. So this is connected with what we took previously. So when the objectives have been defined by the parents and children, and remember, we can engage little children, but as they get older, obviously their involvement increases. We talk about the benefits of what our objectives are so that it's not just dictated by the parents. And we encourage teamwork, because a lot of the things happening in the household and also outside the household have a connection with one another. You know, we are interacting with one another and other people around us. So we need to feel like a team as opposed to one just giving orders. And it needs to be followed up with consequences. What does that mean? When we agree upon something, the parents and the children involved, the agreement is upon taking away something, those things are meaningful to the child. Meaning if the objectives are not met, the objectives that have been defined within the routine, if they're not met, then there will be consequences. And again, these consequences could apply to the adults as well as the children. And again, they need to be agreed upon. So when there's an informed decision, when something needs to be done about it, then you can easily say, do you remember we talked about this before? Do you remember we agreed that we would maybe take away our watching time for the week if we don't achieve certain things that we had agreed on, and for basically reasons that are within our control. Maybe certain things are not in our control, that it couldn't happen. So obviously logic needs to play a part as well. So you need to be able to judge where you can draw the line and where you need to take action. So
you can define what watching time is.
What watching time is? So basically we don't have the television on in our home except for timings that we've agreed upon with the girls. And they get to watch certain episodes, programs that we discuss and we talk about. So that is their watching time, So that's something meaningful to them. So it's taken away from them if certain things are not met. Yeah. Right. Okay. So yeah. So I'll just give a sample weekly routine. Okay, this might look really scary once I click the button. But it's not really. It's just a weekly routine that we had designed for our girls when they were much younger. And remember, a weekly routine would alter according to the child's age. You're going to have to keep revising it and reviewing it based on your objectives, based on what needs to be achieved and the goals set forward. So this is something that I like using different resources. It was available online, and I just filled it in with what worked for us. Okay. So for example, our week is not a Monday to Friday, by the way. Our week is Sunday to Sunday, meaning we schedule things in throughout 7 days a week. So the children know what is expected of them, and we know what is expected of us as well. So for example, we've got slots in, we take 2-hour slots. I talked about this before. What this is doing, it minimizes frustration. For example, there's a bit of a time lag. You're not on the child's head that, why aren't you there at 6 a.m. sharp, for example, if something needs to be done at that time. So our day starts early, which is always the morning prayer, and other things kick in while we're doing it. Now look, these are brackets, so there could be an overlap here and there, but it's okay as long as we're achieving what we need to do. So it's in front of you, for example, 5 to 7, you've got the morning prayer, which you call Fajr, and there's a recitation of the Quran. This could be now memorization, reciting with each other on your own. It varies. 7 to 9, we basically break off for like breakfast, and they've got little tasks to do with themselves. Again, you're going to define this based on your objectives. For us, it was really important for our girls to learn how to make their own breakfast, to learn how to make their bed, get organized for the day. That means, that they need to change or they shower later, whatever it is that they've planned for that day needs to be done within that period. So it's not just sitting in your pajamas, getting to your workbook, but you have to prepare for your day. And then roughly 9 to 11 is where workbooks kick in. You can see on Monday to Friday, it's more structured for workbooks. And we like to, break it. Now, this is something that keeps changing. So this is like a rough framework. Workbooks means what? This is not their academic studies. This could be individual on their own, or it could be like, for example, I've taught my kids mostly from their primary education. I've worked with them, and we've had also a tutor come in now. So at that time is where I would be with them, right? And that helps them. What our aim is to make them independent learners. So eventually they are used to that and they're opening their books. They're not waiting for me to have a class with them as such, but the topic's open and then they start reading and they've got questions they can ask or they can research further.
I just also like to emphasize one of the benefits of this is, as you can see, cleaning up your room, making your bed, that we're instilling responsibility in the child as well, right? So this is discipline and responsibility. That you're making your own bed, you're tidying up your own room, you're working on your on your lessons for the day. I just thought I'd add on.
Yeah, because it's not something that should be looked down upon. For example, if I had to clean the bathroom, there's nothing wrong with that. Like we want this to be a part of their lives. Again, 11 to 1. I'm just going because of the time by the Khidher. I'm just going to go a bit fast. 11 to 1, for example, we would have like, this time would be like, we had structured a trainer to come in. For example, they were training for Taekwondo, so we would accommodate that. We would accommodate their own free time. They love to read, they love drawing, they love working on their own projects and stories. They would work on that during that time, so they get that time. We would break for lunch. Again, Dhuhr means the midday prayer, like the around between, so yeah, so they have that basically clocked in between 1 and 3. So they have a bit of a breather as well. 3 to 5 now is more structured again. From Monday to Friday, we had a teacher coming in for their Arabic classes. This was important for us that they had their classes, which is for Islamic studies, in the Arabic language. So the teacher would speak to them in Arabic, whether it's Arabic as a language, whether it's the Islamic studies, but in Arabic, the Quran, whether it's Hadith, whatever it was. So we would have her come in for a good 2 hours, and the girls would study as a group. And then that would break off with the evening, meaning basically they get time to go for their prayers and then go outside and play with their friends. So they get a break again. And then this is again roughly because we know the evening prayer comes in plus or minus. So 7 to 9 again is another bracket where they need to, we're going to have dinner, we're going to wash up, get ready for bed, pray the night prayer, Isha prayer, and other things that can be accommodated. Again, it's a framework. So obviously it's not robotic. It's not like, oh my goodness, how are we going to get all these things done in this time? It starts flowing because it becomes a routine. So I don't know if I'm rushing through this, but Brother Khidher, you could basically help me here if you have any questions.
I would just like to probably ask if anybody has any questions. But one comment I have, Sister Sabine, this is a really interesting chart, the weekly program you have. And what I've noticed, and this was raised last week, how much time do kids need to really study? Because if I look at your program, you have 2 hours for what I would call secular studies.
Right.
And then, of course, you have time there for Quran and other stuff, which is also education. But I'm sure a lot of the parents who are not homeschooling would be wondering, is that enough time?
Right.
Because currently kids are spending almost 6-7 hours with the sort of COVID homeschooling, if you like. Maybe you can shed some light on that, please.
Yes, yes, Brother Khidher. So basically, like we worked with our girls. Like our elder two, was after grade. The eldest was after grade 2, so she had obviously developed the language skills and the reading and the writing. The second born had completed preschool, so her writing was and reading writing was still developing. And the younger two are basically they're like totally raw. Like this, we worked with them from scratch. So keeping that in mind and seeing how they progressed, we worked from half an hour slots, this is like formal learning, to 2 hours sessions where even up to O levels, my eldest could do that with 2 hour slots, meaning these were 2 hours that were fixed for her. But need be, for example, if she's having a tutor come in, she would slot it in late, at a separate time. If need be, she needs to put in more time to now prepare for her exams and research and all, they would slot that in. But 2 hours basically means what? The whatever curriculum you're following, basically this is what worked for us. The formal structured learning would be more than enough. Why? Because it's a one-on-one interaction. The resources are at hand. It's amazing because in classrooms we know that just even if it's a 40-minute lesson, the teacher usually her lesson plan wouldn't go for more than half an hour, 20 to 30 minutes, because it's all these classroom management things going on, right? So this is what worked for us. And again, the learning doesn't stop here. See, this is the structured learning, but there's still so much reading happening on the side. They've got a lot of supplementary activities going on that aid the learning process in itself.
Okay, I think that sounds good. So continue, Sabine.
Would you like me to move on?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're just going to move on towards curriculum now. In just layman's term, what does curriculum mean? It's basically now the education program. Like, what are you going to follow for your child? Okay, so I'm just sharing a few curriculums that are out there, just for the sake of you knowing as a parent. For me, like, if it's going to be a long list, so you're going to be like, what am I going to do with all this, right? Just to reassure you, because I was a parent who decided to, we decided to homeschool our children. For us, it was a relief, basically knowing that there's options out there. So I just want you to look at it with that light, that look, there are options out there. It's based on what your needs are and your requirements are, that you choose what suits you. We're just sharing what is out there, okay? So now if one is choosing a curriculum, it's selected based on the objectives and future pursuits for your child, okay? Such as what caters to the learning abilities of the child, meaning your child, what suits your child is what you're going to look at. Every child learns differently, and that's what Absar had emphasized in the previous session, that you can accommodate that with home education. A curriculum that might suit one child might not suit the other, and so you have that flexibility. It doesn't mean you have to do that, but that flexibility is there. What one is familiar with, what is usually recommended is what the parents are familiar with, is what is good to start with, so that it's not too overwhelming, and then you keep exploring and learning, and then you can switch depending on what the need is. Regional university choices. This might sound like really far-fetched, but like our guest said, they for example, they've gone with the Canadian system because they can foresee their children studying in Canada. And this is what is recommended. Like, if you are able to predict, obviously nobody can totally predict what's in the future, but you can relatively predict where your children are going to be studying. For example, if the university is in the UK, then you will switch towards, the British curriculum. Or if you're studying locally, what is working in the local universities here in Kenya, and vice, and whatever region it is. So keep that in mind so that you can do your research, even if your child is still in primary school. Keep it in mind such that you're aware of what university requirements are based on what your setting is.
Also, we've actually had friends in the past who have actually said, look, they've actually told us this, they're well-to-do families, very, education is a very big priority for them. But they actually told us, look, we're not interested in our children, even going towards university. We want our children to get into business. They actually told us that. And so, so the way they were laying out and planning their children's education and the curriculum that they were following was a very, very different, curriculum. And of course, that's a whole different discussion as to how important university is in this day and age. So we don't want to get into that, but some people do have that concept.
Right. Okay. So Brother Khidher, should I keep going?
Yep, please continue. If you have any
All right.
questions from the audience, please feel free to ask your questions on the chat, please.
Fair enough. So we've just got we're just going to look at available curriculums that make life easy. Basically, they're tailored, they're made, and they're there available for you to use. Some of them are American curriculums, some of them are British curriculums, some of them are you'll see anyway. So there's one called the classical education method, which I talked about earlier in the previous session. I will share that on the Facebook, the group for Facebook, where the book is called The Well-Trained Mind. I use that a lot for references. It just opens your mind to different methods. The Charlotte Mason method. This is again another curriculum in itself. The Waldorf method. I know there are some schools in Kenya that follow that curriculum. The Montessori education method. And remember, Montessori education, you hear of Maria Montessori. You hear this for kindergarten, but it's actually a whole curriculum in itself. Now, this is what we're common with in Kenya. This is the British curriculum, where they have the Key Stage 2 up to Key Stage 5, which is primary. And it leads up towards like middle school, you could say, you know, and then the O level, which is IGCSE or GCSE, and then the A level before university. There's a K-12 curriculum, which is again the American system. Now these are also, I'm also including a few Islamic curriculums that you might want to look into. One is called Ad-Duha. One is Iqra. This can also be used as resources. You can look up resources in Noor Art. There's a website called Noor Art, which is filled with different types of curriculums. If you're interested in the Arabic curriculum or Islamic studies that you want to supplement with. And then this is where it gets interesting. You can design your own curriculum, tailor to your family's needs by incorporating material from different syllabuses or syllabi, right? So this is somewhat what we've been working with. We haven't followed one particular curriculum as such. What we've done is we've taken different, like for example, my girls are taking their O level and A level, the older two. So we're using their syllabus, what is required of them to fulfill the requirements for O level and A level. But we've, like you saw in that routine, we've accommodated so many other things. All right.
Be able to share these some of these slides in our group chat after the session.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we can share this because I mean there's a lot that one can learn from. Like for example, the Charlotte Mason method is really interesting. They focus on unit studies, and these are like homeschooling curriculums. So if you have like many children, for example, it can get exhausting teaching them different things. So you sort of group them together and you focus on a topic and they learn in stages. And they've got things like living books, which makes things very interesting. So yeah, it's amazing, you know, the resources at hand.
At this point, I was thinking, Mr. Nkurumah, if you could just you know, while we're talking about this, Sister Sabine is showing the examples, and this is mainly a Muslim audience who understand a lot of the things we're talking about. Can you give your perspective also, just briefly on curriculums, and you know, why did you even consider homeschooling your kids? If you could just share that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of the list that she has placed on the slide, and I recognize the research that she has done, because that's what my wife and I did when we first went into this. We chose basically to homeschool our kids because we found that the system as it is right now was not conducive to what we wanted and the outcomes that we had desired for our children. So we figured if we can, my wife and I, if we just put our heads together. I mean, it was a difficult period trying to figure out which way to go, but it wasn't difficult in the sense that it was hard that we could not do it. It was difficult because there was so much choice, and it became so. It's basically up to you in what direction you want to go. That's what we figured out, and we figured out that look, what's our philosophy? What is it that we want our children to be, to grow into? Therefore, then we worked backwards. Let's build a curriculum that will work for that. So initially it was what we call eclectic, and I think that's the last portion that she mentioned on that list. We call it eclectic, and we picked and choose subjects based on our kids' needs and desires at that time, and then work with them throughout the elementary until when they got to high school. I agree with what she's saying 100%, is that depending on where you want your kids to go, then you'll begin to work them towards that. So if you want them to go to university in Europe, then you'll begin to tailor their education towards that. But there's an undertone, and I think what Parents Online are trying to allude to, Mr. Khan and his wife are trying to allude to, is that when you're the main point in doing homeschooling is to ensure that the children are learning and not memorizing for exam, and not setting them up for to go into Harvard. I mean, the point is, can they learn? And if they get into those Ivy League type universities, in the future, then they're getting there because the information and the environment that you've created at home has been conducive for learning, so that they're not afraid of mathematics. They're not afraid of these subjects that seem to be so daunting. The curriculum is meant to be a tool to use to help your children learn. So I see the list that she has written, and I 100% concur. I am a little biased though, in the sense that given the organization that I run here, the curriculum that we have sort of chosen, in as much as it is Canadian, that's the aspects of it. We talk about the core aspects of it, but we wholeheartedly teach them about Africa. We are biased in that sense because, and I'll talk about this a little later, in the sense that, can we teach them about what Africa means and who Africans are and the impact that Africans have in this world? And I would dare say even Kenyans, what aspect can we bring into their education so they can understand who they were, know where they are at, so that they're prepared for the future that they will inherit. So that's more or less what I would say towards that right now.
I think you would share with us more on the electric way of choosing the curriculum later on when we give you the podium.
Yeah.
For the audience to understand that this is not a specific program for Muslims only. I think that's the reason I wanted you to speak up, was it's people who have similar values. They want to choose what the kids, what they want for the children. And later on, when we give you the podium, you'll share more of that. So thanks for that comment. Sister Sabine, sorry for breaking the flow. Please continue on the next slide.
So I'd also just like to appreciate what Mr. Nkurumah was saying, and this is again a very, very important part of education, which is oftentimes missed in the schooling system. For example, I don't mean to criticize, but I mean, for example, the British system, the history that I learned. I mean, I took history, for 2 years, and I did the Cambridge system, and the history was all focused on Europe. Well, what about Africa? Is nothing happening in Africa? What about in the subcontinent? What about the Far East? Is nothing happening in those countries? And people from their countries, from their, should know about their own backgrounds. Africans should know about their history. This is what people say, is that, if you don't know your past, then you will keep making the same mistakes in the future. So I wholeheartedly agree with what Mr. Nkurumah was saying, that we should educate our children and focus on teaching them their heritage and their history as well.
Great. Great. So we'll hear a bit more about that, or how to choose the curriculum. So Sister Sabine, you can continue.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, so we're just going to broadly divide the curriculum, like Brother Khidher had said before, into the secular studies, maybe like we could say that's the academic sides of it, and the religious studies. This is again our perspective based on how we've approached it. Again, please note that these aspects of education are correlated. for us, if I teach science, I remember learning science in school, but there was never a mention of God. You know, even if things like evolution were taught as a fact, whereas it's a theory. For example, things come to it. I'll just give a simple example: adaptation. You know, when we do this chapter on adaptation, I'm not shy to teach my children that, you know what, yes, absolutely, you know, when the lion hunts, it's in the savannah, it's hidden in the grass because the color and it blends. But I know that, you know, they need to know that the animal in no way can plan this, that I will change my skin tone to a golden brown, so I'm hidden in the grass, or the stripes on the tiger, for example, whatever camouflage techniques there are. But there is a creator who has designed this, and the system is working in a perfect manner because he's created in a perfect manner. So this is just an example of how we interrelate the knowledge that they're seeking, you know, in their books, and how it builds basically. It's just not academic knowledge, but it also they also resonate with that knowledge. So yeah. If we look at the secular studies, and this is very common, this is what we normally see in I'm just going to go through a list, and I haven't covered everything. I'm just trying to like include what's usually there. Again, that's the beauty of this, is that you can introduce things that are important to you and that meet your objectives of your children's education. So for usually the first language is the English language. And again, this varies according to the region. So in our context, first language is English, in which they are taught and they learn. The comprehension begins. But again, this is not limited to that. And in no way is it, you know, we don't mean to, you know, cripple anyone's other styles of teaching. Mathematics is something which is introduced at a young age. Science, and again, that obviously evolves towards biology, chemistry, and physics as they move higher up. History, some curriculums start that from a young age, whereas others don't. This is very important to us. We wanted our children to learn history, and I mentioned this before, like we'll go into mathematics to such great degrees, but because, you know, it's so much importance is given to it, but something which is like history, which we need to know what happened, so to understand the present, you know, is not really emphasized upon. So this is something we wanted with our girls. Geography, obviously to make sense of our surroundings. Second languages is something which is really important as well. And again, second languages, it goes on and on. For us, Arabic was very important, obviously, to understand the scripture to begin with. What is God saying to us, and other languages. Like my eldest, she loves Japanese, so she's learning Japanese and Chinese as well. A bit of Swahili, alhamdulillah. So it's up to you what you want to incorporate. Literature, a lot of reading. You know, we emphasize a lot with reading with our girls, emphasize meaning, not that we define that you have to read this book within this period of time, but we put this environment of reading where they were excited to pick up a book and read it, you know. So this is a culture that we've sort of, cultivated, what would you say? Yeah, in our home. So yeah, so these are, again, secular, like it's not limited to this. This is just certain things just to, for us to, you know, open our minds as to this is what we're talking about. I don't know, Brother Khidher, are we open to questions over here, or should I move on?
I was just going to ask if I can get Mr. Nkurumah back online, just because of time management.
Yes, of course.
But you know, maybe before I hand over to him briefly, you've mentioned so many different extracurricular things here, like languages. So can you tell us a bit about what you guys have achieved so far in terms of maybe languages and extracurricular, just for people to understand some of the achievements that are possible with this kind of, just briefly in about 15 seconds, if you can.
About what they've done in terms of language and stuff.
Yeah. So I think the mic is muted.
No, I was asking Sister Sabine and Brother Absar, before I hand over to Mr. Nkurumah, maybe you can...
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
We thought you were asking Mr. Nkurumah. Okay.
Sorry, Brother. Could you repeat that?
I was saying, you know, what are some of the achievements you've had with your kids, especially extracurricular? You know, you've listed all these languages.
Extracurricular. Yeah, we're going to come to that, Brother Khidher, with regards to extracurricular.
Okay.
But for example, I'll just give you something related to secular. Okay. Can I give an example related to secular?
Sure.
And you know, our kids are not geniuses. I'll be honest. They're not geniuses. These are children who love to learn. These are ordinary children. Okay. My eldest took 2 years off from before her O-levels to memorize the Quran. Okay, this is basically by memory. Okay, so she was with her books off and on. She would get back again. Like reading is just part of our culture. So she would just pick, you pick books up, things like, books like Roots, books like which go into classics. Like you've got a whole series of, like, even the Jungle Book. I didn't know it was a classic. I thought it was just a movie, but I learned that later on. So she has this whole collection of books. So she was already reading maybe things like Jane Austen, which I cannot connect with. It's just so difficult, the language.
Yeah, she's read all of her books.
Yeah. So and then she learns that this is now her literature exam, O-level literature exam. So she was preparing for that after she completed her hifz, and she took only just 6 months, less than 6 months to prepare for the O-level paper. When we got close to the paper, and like I'm telling you, this is not a brilliant child. This is just a child who loves. She's studying what she loves. Okay. When we were about a month close to her paper, we learned that the tutor, we were bringing tutors just before their exams to prepare them on the style of how to attempt the paper. We learned that the tutor who was tutoring her at the time was short of one book. The Cambridge syllabus, you need to be, you just need to know what's going on because they keep updating and changing. And we learned she was short of one book, and this was a Shakespeare book. All right. And this girl had already read the book. What book was that?
I don't.
Okay. So it'll come to my mind later on. 1 month. She had 1 month and she read that book. She had already read it. All she had to do was review it with her teacher. And she got an A+ grade in her literature O-level exam. A star. Okay, I'm not exaggerating, Brother Khidher, 1 month with a Shakespeare book. Why? Because she was passionate about literature. She loves that. It just basically is like food and water for her. And why was she able to achieve that? Because we allowed her to explore and nurture this talent and this passion that she has, which I don't think would have happened was she in that the system that where you just do it for the sake of getting your grades. Yeah, so that's one thing I could maybe shed light on.
That's a fantastic example and a very inspirational one. Over to Mr. Nkurumah, just because of time. Sorry, Sister Sabine. We'll probably continue next week with more of that.
No. It's all good. It's all good. This is where we had planned, Brother Khidher.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Nkurumah, you have the screen. We can take the slides off.
Okay. I didn't prepare the slides because I was going to talk about the information that I have. Basically, is information that I curated online and as well from the Ministry of Education. So you had asked me to talk about the three aspects, right? One of them being the legal aspects behind in which schooling exists in Kenya, and I'll speak to that in Kenya specifically, as well as the curriculum. My take on curriculum. I'll add on to what I spoke before, and finally about HEAD and what HEAD means and how it can be of value even to the community and the people who are here today. If I was to speak first on the legalities, so it has been a bit ambiguous, and it's been ambiguous for a reason. Okay, since 2005, when there was a sessional paper that was written by the Ministry of Education that spoke towards education in Kenya, in it, they talked about enhancing access and equity for all. That's the basic premise behind that. And in it, if you look at section 2.14, in it, they talk about adopting a child-friendly schooling environment. They list a myriad number of items that lead towards what a child-friendly school environment is. There they talk about homeschooling. That's the one place that we have found that the Ministry of Education speaks about homeschooling. So in a way they say, this was in 2005. That led us all the way till after the Constitution changed in 2010. And when the Constitution changed, two things happened. One, the sessional paper continued as is, they adopted it. But the second thing was that the Ministry of Education changed the Education Act to read that all children must attend a school, which is in sort of contradiction to the Constitution of Kenya. And in the Constitution of Kenya, it talks about the article that talks about that all children have a right to education. So of late, our organization, as well as there are two other individuals who have raised a constitutional case against the Ministry of Education, particularly towards what it means to have a learning environment for your child, so that your child is not missing out on an education. Okay, so that case right now, as we speak, is in court. There's a session actually coming up in September, mid-September, where the judge has requested the parties at hand, one of them being the Ministry of Education, as well as the DPP, to come in to create a resolution whereby we individuals who choose to homeschool their children will not be in contradiction to the Education Act. And I mean, I don't want to say that Corona was a blessing. Everybody seems to be homeschooling now, even the same people who are in the judiciary and in the educational system. So it's so far, the last time I talked to the petitioners, they did say that things are looking up, and the judge will be able to rule in September. So we're waiting to see based on that. Yeah.
Mr. Nkurumah,
Sorry?
Those who are currently homeschooling, is it legal at the moment or not yet?
So you see, that's an interesting question. So if you speak to the ministry, they will say it's illegal, right? It's illegal to homeschool. But on the other hand, they do say that children who are learning at home, so you show that they are learning. That's the thing. If you show that they are learning, they won't pressure you. So on one hand, they're saying, don't make a lot of noise about homeschooling. Just go on about your business, okay? Don't flaunt it in our faces, right? Until this is resolved. But if you do, then you'll force their hand. And by forcing their hand means that they will send the police, and you have to prove to them that you are, that your children are learning. So the one thing that within the homeschooling community, even when the constitutional case came up, the one thing that was very evident was that for those who are homeschooling, you can show your portfolio, show that work is happening. That is good enough for the government to say that that the children are learning. It's in those cases where you'll find that people are not necessarily, the children are not learning, and basically they're just being left to their own devices. That's when the issue lies, because that's now negligence. And that's why the act was written the way it was, because they felt that kids would be neglected if they're at home. I'll just finish off by saying, within the same policy document, they do have the policy framework for the nomadic education of Kenya, which means the nomads who are moving from place to place, I mean, they're not in a school, they are moving from place to place, but there is still a policy framework for them to learn. So there are myriads of other ways I've seen people within the homeschooling community creating that framework to prove that they are creating an environment for their children to learn at home. I hope that sort of answers the question. Is there a question towards that?
I think there was, and I think you've clarified that.
Okay.
Maybe you could tell us a bit about HED is a relatively new organization. Maybe you can tell us a bit about what HED can do for aspiring homeschoolers or existing ones.
Yeah. So what we have found out, what we have done, we are 9 founding members, and each one of us brings different strengths to the table. There's about 3 of them who do have masters in education. And then we've got, and all of us are parents who are homeschooling anyway. And we all range from 20 years homeschooling down to, I think the youngest is, I think, about 5 years homeschooling. The rest of us are anywhere between 7, 10 to about 20 years homeschooling. And what we have done is we've seen, because within us, we all have various strengths in terms of one, curriculum development, 2, creating extracurricular activities. There's also a lady who actually, she started her own homeschooling school, and I'll put that in quote, where she takes on people at her home and leads them through the curriculum that she developed. And then we've got another lady who's into the arts, and she brings in that creative aspect of the arts. So what HED we've done is we run sessions every month to help parents who are homeschooling learn what more to do. So for instance, we finished a session on science. So they were running on Zoom now. We're running sessions on Zoom, but prior to COVID, we were actually meeting at a venue and then running sessions throughout 1 to 2 hour sessions towards that. We also do have a homeschooling 101 session that we run to sort of introduce you into what homeschooling is and how you can create that environment for homeschooling to happen. What we did find out and what we said, even as homeschoolers, is that initial, jump into homeschooling is trepidatious. You're scared. You don't know where to go. You don't know who to talk to. You feel alone, and sometimes you just don't know who to reach out to. So we became that organization for most people. We can hold your hand and walk you through based on, as a philosophy that you and your family want to lead. So if you're a family that says, look, I don't want any curriculum and I want it to be eclectic and I want to be able to just, if we're going to the Mara, then we're doing animals. Okay, good. So how do you create a curriculum around that? So it becomes a project-based type curriculum, where every child has their own folder and they get to take their own pictures and write, the different aspects of the animals that they see. And that entire binder becomes your learning lessons, really, that you can prove that you did those lessons. If you want to do agriculture and go and plant, okay, great, let's go to the shamba, let's go, and everybody has got their slot and you get to plant your carrots, your tomatoes, and see them grow. Right there, you're learning about photosynthesis, you're learning about, nutrition, you're learning, they're almost about 6 different subjects just in agriculture alone, or the act of farming. Yeah. So we've said, look, we can walk with you through that journey and guide you as we go along. So we not only run those sessions on a monthly basis, but we also have our database of parents that we can tap into on the different strengths within the community. That's the one thing homeschoolers are good at, is that we are a cohesive group, and we don't hold on to knowledge. It's not silos of knowledge. No, we're willing to dish it out, and those who are experts in one area, then you come forth and you offer it to the group. So as I'd mentioned earlier, if the ethos is, can we teach about the African and who the African is? You see, that's one of our ethos, but we're not just relegating it to just the African. That's our sense, is, can we teach about the African and who they were, who they are, and where they are going? The different stories that have not been told about who we are. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Nkurumah. So I think the audience here should take advantage, and I think we will be sharing your website on our group chat.
Yes.
Basically,
Ed.Africa.
The idea is basically to leverage on what HED can offer, especially for those who are looking at getting into homeschooling for the first time. A very daunting experience, and you have now the help available through us. That's something really interesting about going to Mara and learning. Can you shed a bit of light on curriculums and how broad can they be? Sister Sabine mentioned a few of them that were the ones that we all hear about, the KCSE. GCSEs, but you talked about agriculture, you talked about going to the Mara. So can you give us some perspective on how broad can you be on curriculum? Yeah.
So and that's it. You can be as broad as you want to design that program. And we do call it eclectic, but it's more based on project-based learning. Right? So you would pick a project, and based on that project, you then build the relevant knowledge that the child should acquire on the different stages, different ages that they are. So in as much as you're doing, for instance, let's say social sciences, okay, well, then in it, my 14-year-old, my 17 and my 19-year-old can all be learning the same subject, but the content is what's going to be different. So in as much as we are learning about, we're saying the people of Africa. So the expectation I have from my 19-year-old is going to be different. I'll expect a report that will detail, let's say, the key people, who they are, where they've come from, what kind of environment do they live, what's their thinking pattern. There's going to be a more comprehensive report rather than my 10-year-old who just give me probably facts and write a report with diagrams included in it. You know, it becomes as versatile as you choose. So you're not just it's not necessarily just rote where you just spew off data, but you take that data and you make it applicable to the child, so that it becomes an interactive, immersive process where they get to immerse themselves in the content, and on top of that immersion, they are they're learning. So it's more child-centered learning. It's an inquiry-based approach. So the questions that the child asks are what you will use to guide the child into the content that they're involved in. Yeah. What we are finding is that these in terms of how universities are receiving their students, it's like, if you're one who can show that you can do research, that you're organized, that the evidence of your learning is being shown by the portfolios that you're giving, and you can talk about it on a comprehensive level, then I think you stand a better chance than somebody who just passed an A, for instance, and wrote the exam. So that portfolio-based learning is an important key, an important part of the curriculum. So it's eclectic. I can't say, go to the textbook center and buy the eclectic curriculum. You're the one who gets to build that curriculum. You're the one who comes to design it. And earlier, when we first started with our children, that's what we did. We sort of built that curriculum based on our children's strengths, and we fed them on that. Yeah.
Just wondering, from the audience, last week we had some people who are thinking about getting into homeschooling, and I see from some of the participants, some of you are already homeschoolers. So if any of the audience would like to share whether they're considering and they need more help, we've put the website for Head Africa on the chat, and they'll also be on our group, which we'll be sharing with you the link shortly. Also, in the interest of time, I just wanted Nkurumah to give his closing comments, and same for Brother Absar and Sister Sabine, because we want to close in the next few minutes. So, Mr. Nkurumah, if there's any sort of tips or last minute advice you want to give to the audience, those who are considering getting into homeschooling, maybe share with them some of the exciting experiences you've had being a homeschooler.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely would encourage those who are looking to go into homeschooling. It's going to be involving. I'm not going to sit here and say it's the easiest thing and everybody can, and everybody will simply just jump in and run with it. No, there's going to be some time to create. I mean, you have to be involved. You cannot be absent from the process. You're going to be involved in it. Don't forget, you're not just creating workers for the next factory. You are creating human beings who are going to be the ones who are the bearers of our society, who are going to lead the society, in the near future. So look at this as an opportunity to create that space, so that the disciplines that the children are learning throughout the process are the disciplines that they'll carry on in life, right? For far too long, we've relegated that aspect to our institutions to do that. And now we're saying, no, we don't want to relegate that aspect. Our schools were not designed to raise our children. We were the ones who've been given that command, raise the child so that they could be the Kwame Nkrumahs of tomorrow, the Barack Obamas of tomorrow, right? So look at your household as that first step into creating this part. If you have a 4-year-old, you've got a perfect opportunity to groom a child into understanding who they are, who God created them to be. And this platform we call the world, I mean, that's their canvas. They're the ones who get to inherit it based on who they have been designed to be. So create the home so that they can begin to see the opportunities, in schools. And I think we all do know this. Again, it's an assumption that we all know that, each child learns differently, the learning styles, whether the child is an auditory learner, a visual learner, or a kinesthetic learner. If you've created your household for your child to be able to learn, man, you've just developed a leader. You've developed a person who's going to shape the destinies, not just for themselves, but for the others who are coming in front. So I personally take it seriously, because I know I've been with my children since we came back. And in as much as we have a curriculum, that Canadian curriculum, we are 100% African here, because that's what we want our kids to be. We teach them the nyatitis, we teach them the obokanos, if you know, those are the drums, and we play them. We celebrate Africa because we feel that Africa is the next frontier, and we need to create the people right now. All of us here are creating the ones who will be seen as the shapers of this continent. So I urge you to join us, and I'll be looking forward to seeing next when the corona is over together. Yeah.
Just before I give it to Brother Absar, there's a question we have, and I don't know if Head can help us with this. For special needs, children with special needs, do you have support structure for that?
Yes. What we have found is that we partner. There's a Dr. Olano that we partner with, who and he's just one of many, who have centers where they can help you with either dyslexia, or if you're, I see the question was specifically towards dyslexia. And he runs a center where he'll go in, do an assessment, and based on that assessment, he'll give you the tools that you will need to help your child with their learning disability. He does run a center somewhere here in Karen, and sure, we can always share his contacts with you, and then you can share it with the group. But that's just one aspect of the learning disability, right? There are many other learning disabilities that we found, whether it's autism or I think that's the one that just comes to mind right now. We partner with different individuals who can help your child in their learning journey.
That's great to know. So after the session on our Facebook page, we'll take that question from Ms. Seema.
Okay.
And link you up with us. So thank you for that. Can I give the...
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nkurumah. And just to let our audience know that next week we'll have another founding member, Ms. Grace,
yes,
who will be joining us also from your organization. So please tune in next week, and I'll pass it over to Brother Absar and Sister Sabine for any last tips, comments, anything you'd like people to inspire them.
No, it's great, Brother Khidher, that you've given this opportunity for us to bridge the gaps. We've got to learn about HEAD as well, which is here in Kenya. Like-minded objectives could really resonate with what the brother was saying here. Very refreshing. It's good to hear that we're not in our own little bubble. But at the same time, there is a WhatsApp group for homeschoolers who have joined. We'll share it on the Facebook page for others who do need support as well. We have sisters who already embarked on this journey before COVID-19, and I'm sure everybody will be able to be a support for one another as well.
And so we'll share a link to this homeschooling groups that you talked about in WhatsApp, I think run by some of the sisters, and I see some of them online. So we'll share this in our group as well for those who'd like to learn more about homeschooling through that group. Okay. Brother Absar, anything for us to conclude with? We're just past 8:30, so we want to conclude in a minute. Yeah.
No, I just my wife and I, while Mr. Nkurumah was talking, we were just actually amongst ourselves, we were just saying, like we mentioned, a few times, that we're not in any way experts on homeschooling. It's just experience, and so many of the things that Mr. Nkurumah were sharing it was resonating with us, because it's the exact same philosophy that we have in terms of the eclectic system that that he was talking about. So I guess we learned it through trial and error, and he's based on his background and the educationalists that he works with. I guess they have this system in place. So I would just recommend everyone at least try it. If you're happy with the conventional schooling system, great. That's wonderful. But we would encourage everyone to at least try home education, and this is the perfect opportunity. And then make your decision.
Okay. So thanks. I'll just give my last 30 seconds. First of all, I'd like to thank our guests. All of you have been fantastic in terms of your preparation and your eloquence, and I think we've all enjoyed to hear from you, the three of you. So thank you for that. I also would like to just resonate what both of you have said, or the three of you have said. I think it's really important for us to try it out, because our children are actually an amana or a responsibility, and it's not their fault that we are lazy. So I think we all need to make the effort and give them the best opportunity. As Mr. Nkurumah said, we are possibly raising leaders in our houses, and all we need to do is just put a bit of that effort. So with those, for the remaining of the group, we will be sharing a recorded video on our YouTube channel, which will be posted on our Facebook group. If you just go up the chat, you will find the Facebook group link. And you will also be able to ask more questions for next week's session, which is the last session we have on this series of homeschooling. So please do share your questions on our Facebook page so we can answer them. And we will be sharing the link and the video on our page as well. So with that, I'd like to thank you all again one more time. And we see you next week, same time, 7:30 p.m. next Wednesday. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I'll just stay on to put in the link in a second, but the rest of you can switch off your cameras. Thank you. Okay, so that was the link that's been shared, and you can save that, inshallah. That is the link for the Facebook page, and we will be posting the link for the WhatsApp group on that page, and we'll also be sharing the website for HEAD on that page. So please join our group, and we'll be able to share more information. Thank you.